Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a Peruvian podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
I am so good. It has been so long since you and I have traveled down to Peru together. I'm really excited. I'm sure our listeners are as well.
Listen, those are huge episodes. They were
Definitely.
The primer to our best
Definitely.
download day ever.
That's true.
And the Peruvian episodes were so hot that
Classics.
we decided it was going to be a trilogy, like all of the great franchises.
Yeah.
You got the Star Wars, the Indiana Jones. I'm saying all the original.
Richard the First, Second, and Third.
Sure, yeah. Also great.
Yeah.
You had the Toy Story movies, and then they
Godfather.
had the fourth, the Godfather. Right, all these trilogies. So today is finishing off our Peruvian trilogy, which doesn't mean I might not want to expand it in the future. And today we are talking just about the jewel of Peru, Machu Picchu.
And this is episode 1 of Machu Picchu, so this just covers getting there. There's going to be
no.
another whole episode about
we
getting
covered
back.
getting there already. This is there.
True.
You're there. So it's all those other Peruvian episodes, they were all leading up to this, the crowning achievement. You are going to be at the top of the Inca stairs. You are going to see Machu Picchu.
So if you have not listened to Peru parts 1 and parts 2, I want you to stop right now. I want you to go to the show notes. I want you to click on Peru part 1, listen for that hour, then click on Peru part 2, listen for that hour.
3 hours.
And then by the time you get back, we'll still be here just getting going on this Peru episode 3.
That's right. Well, we do have, you're pointing correctly to the fact that we've got a bit of housekeeping to take care of right here at the top. We got 2 things we got to cover. One is a listener story written in, and it's from a listener named Kiernan or Caroline, I'm not sure. And it's about, it's a story from Switzerland. So this listener who wrote in to the email, which by the way is outofofficepod
at gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Yeah. And outofofficepod at gmail.com. And Caroline, apparently with her husband, her or betrothed, one or the other, was going out to Switzerland. And apparently they're not big travelers. And they got to their hotel in Switzerland, and they found that the hotel provides a chocolate. In the hotel room, like nicer hotel rooms do.
Yeah, of course.
And,
like on the pillow.
Right, exactly. And they have on, and she did send a picture, on the back of it is an expiration date. And the expiration date said, and this is recent, the expiration date says 05.12.2019. So now what would you say that expiration date is? 05.12.2019.
I would say that it expires Christmas 05.
That's
December 05. Yeah.
Exactly right. Because you are a seasoned traveler. Because you understand that in Europe, the way they write the dates is they put the day first, then the month, then the year. But
also even it also like that wouldn't really even be considered expired in the real world, right? Like
no,
you could
that's
still
true.
eat that chocolate.
Yeah, sure. You could definitely still eat that chocolate, but apparently this very finicky traveler wrote a note to the hotel, put it right onto the chocolate under the explanation date, and said hello. Also, just wrote it in English. Didn't even try to be respectful.
How is this person even a listener?
And says, hello, can you please leave a fresh chocolate? ? Thank you. And then signed it from the betrothed husband, Gene, because obviously this person was too embarrassed to be asking for a fresh chocolate, so pretended it was the husband's problem.
Right.
And this very kind hotel, which I'm seeing based on the stationery, it was called the Bauraulac, Bauraulac.
Oh, good chocolate there.
Actually typed up a response and left it next to the chocolate and said, "Dear Gene, we want to inform you that the chocolate is in fact fresh!" ! In Switzerland, our system to write the date is different than in the States. We always write day, month, year, and not month, day, year. I hope my description has clarified your concern. Kindest regards, Nora Birchinger, housekeeping supervisor. Now, a couple points.
Yeah, there's a couple things to say here.
I mean, first off, how much does this housekeeper hate these people who have stayed, who wouldn't eat a chocolate that is maybe 2 months past its date. I
Right.
mean, but then took the time to write a note,
Yes.
not in the native tongue,
No.
and asked for fresh chocolate, even though the chocolate is already wrapped. I mean, this isn't fresh chocolate. They're not making the chocolate down in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're not making it down in the kitchen, but it's Switzerland, right? So it's pretty fresh. It's coming from the source.
Sure,
You
yeah,
know,
it is
it's
pretty
like
fresh.
it's like when you're in Florida and you get like a glass of Florida orange juice. That's a little fresher than if you got it up here up north.
And what I did a little research, and what's so fascinating is that, as it turns out, did you know that the United States is unique in the world for writing our date, month, day, year? Unique.
I did not know in the world. I have
other
noticed
country.
that so many places I go do it wrong, and I was like, why don't they just do it the correct way? Why don't they? Clearly, the month comes first because people are like, what month is it? That's usually my question, right?
Yeah.
What month is it? You get that right out the gate, and then you figure out the day, and then who needs the year really? Who are these people? But
So just to give you a sense, almost all of South America and Mexico write day, month, year. That also covers the majority of Europe, Russia. China and Mongolia write year, month, day. Year, month,
that seems
day.
even worse than errors.
And then,
Because that's like
I
giving you the
agreed
most
that
useless
seems worse.
information up front. Yeah.
well, I'll tell you the actual worst is that in Canada, apparently they write day, month, year, month, day, year, or year, month, day. They do all three interchangeably. And I mean, it's probably because they're so respectful, right? That anyone who didn't know that.
It's Canada. The stakes are pretty low, like what day it is. It's not.
It's more snow.
Whatever.
More universal health care.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter what day it is. And Ryan, I did try to track down whether there is a reason that Americans are an anomaly in this. And as it turns out, there's no known historical reason that we write the date differently. It's lost to time.
Let me give you a hint though. If the front number is 13, then that it's not like a month. That's definitely the day.
It's good.
Yeah. So if you're in Canada and that happens to you, you'd be like, "Oh, I'm not freaking out. There's not a new month here, but it's the 13th."
All right, Ryan, and so to Carolyn and to Jean, I do hope that you accepted your housekeeper's recommendation, dug into that chocolate, and maybe throw them a few extra euros. It seems like they were pretty polite. They took the time to type up that comment,
Right.
and
I'm sure they got a kick out of that in the office, in the old home office. They probably put that up next to favorite customers.
Yeah.
We've got a recalculating, I think, don't we?
Yes, Ryan, you are right. We also have a recalculating, so let's hit the button.
Recalculating.
All right, Ryan, so we're in recalculating. You know what recalculating is, right?
Right. So recalculating is one of two things. It's when you've made a mistake and we're going to correct it, or hear me out, there's been an update in the WOW Airlines situation.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, it can also just be following up on something that's happened, a story we've covered before, or it could be your mistake. Sometimes you make a mistake and we correct it here at this time. But as you're alluding to, yes, this week there is yet another follow-up in the saga of WOW Airlines, a saga fit for an Icelandic hero, now an Icelandic airline, and that is, Ryan, I can't believe I can't believe it. WOW Air is back.
It's back?
It's back. It's going to be better than ever. WOW Air, we had talked about the decline of WOW Air had horrible implications for tourism in Iceland.
Yeah, it was really bad news for Iceland.
And like always, it is America to the rescue.
Oh,
You've got an American company called U.S. Aerospace Associates. They are flopping down a hot $85 million to save WOW or Air, dial it back up.
Is that a lot of money in airplane money? It doesn't seem like a lot, does it?
No, you're right. And I actually think you can see it based on the business plan that they've developed. So they're not changing the name or the purple color. So they're keeping all the branding. It was so successful the first time around. They're keeping that.
Those planes have just been sitting in dry rot somewhere, right? So they just got to clean them up a bit. Put some gas in them.
that was pretty much the condition when the airline was in business too.
Right.
And
right.
they're going to start nice and slow with that 85 million. In October, they're putting 2 planes back up in the air.
Whoa, Iceland, look out.
And by the middle
hundreds of folks are coming your way.
And by the middle of 2020, they're upping that to 10 planes. WoW is back.
That is fantastic. I think we should be amongst the first people to, well, second. I would rather be the second people to fly.
You want to go on the second plane?
The first plane seems a little.
Yeah,
sketch.
that's true. Let it get the dust off. It's going to be moving its operations to Dulles International Airport in DC, but of course, it's going to keep facilities in Reykjavik.
So you're going to have a direct Dulles to Reykjavik.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that there's a risk. Now, this hasn't been announced officially yet, so I'm not saying this for fact, but there's a risk that the tickets may soon be more than we are used to paying on WoW. Because
Really?
they're introducing airport lounge access and in-flight meals from a menu from a Michelin-starred chef. I mean, that is not the service that one expects from WoW Air.
Let me tell you, I've been I've been on airlines that served Michelin star cuisine, and it didn't taste a lot different from the non-Michelin star.
No,
cuisine
fair. So,
yeah.
but before there was no food. Before they would charge you for a cup of water. So, I have to assume, being Icelandic, there'll probably be some dehydrated fish that you can enjoy.
Sure.
Maybe langoustine.
What's langoustine?
It's like those little lobsters.
Ooh, I love those.
They're very expensive. They cost about $100.
They're not giving you a cup of water. They're not going to give you those.
Yeah, fair. So WoW is back.
Who do they think their clientele is? Just introduce all these fancy, the budget traveler who demands Michelin star restaurants.
I don't know.
There's a huge crossover there.
I think we should probably try to get a guest on from US AmeriCorps or whatever it's called. No, that's not what it's called.
Yeah.
We should probably
you're blowing $85 million.
We should probably try to get a guest on from US Aerospace Associates. I mean, we got to dig into the business plan here.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical, but I'm very happy that for Iceland that they're going to have these purple giants heading back their way.
But I mean, Ryan, I think we can both agree for just $2 million of this $85 million, we are willing to be the podcast of WoW Air, the new WoW Air.
$2 million a year, $1 million each a year is what I think we were asking for.
That's 1.5 me, 500 you.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. And look, we would provide. You could use us on in-flight entertainment. Like you could if you strung together some of these Peru episodes, that gets you all the way to Iceland.
While you're on your way to Iceland, how about learning about Peru?
About Peru, yeah.
I would also love to do their in-flight video.
Yeah, I think we'd be great on their in-flight video. We could be like a multimedia podcast, like how Joe Rogan has both the YouTube and the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We can't even
people
get our
say
Skype
with the Joe
to work.
Rogan of people say with the Joe Rogan of travel podcasts.
Yeah, I've heard that. All right, Ryan. Well, enough dilly-dallying. I think it's important that we get to Machu Picchu so we can talk about Peru for most of the episode. Finish out this trilogy strong. This is Return of the Jedi level. It's time to take off.
Cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan. We've spent so much time in Peru. We've trekked through Lima. We've made our way through the Sacred Valley. We've taken in the salt mines of Maras. We've gone through Cusco. We've seen where Spanish conquest has taken over Inca ruins.
We played with the monkeys.
We played with
the llamas.
We played with monkeys. We played with llamas. We ate guinea pig. But now is the time to get to the pinnacle, physically the pinnacle of Peru, the ruins of Machu Picchu. My voice really cracked there. That's how excited at the ruins of Machu Picchu. So Ryan, do you know anything about Machu Picchu?
I listened to the pod, so I know a little bit about it. I feel like I've sort of been along with you in your travels to Peru, but I don't know a ton about it. No.
So I remember one thing that you were so shocked by is that a lot of this Incan construction is actually not that old, right? Like often we're thinking about like ancient, I feel like when we talk about ruins, we're talking about the Romans, we're talking about the Greeks, we're talking about thousands of years.
This is like 1983.
No. Yeah. It was before I was born. I mean, it was before I was born, to be clear. Machu Picchu, what is left at Machu Picchu was actually built in 1450.
That doesn't seem that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago. And, it was during this kind of age of conquest of the Spanish conquistadors, of the Spanish conquistadores coming over and, killing off native populations. And Machu Picchu, I think most people will be familiar with it from sort of the shots that are anyone that's been there inevitably posts the kind of iconic shots of the ruins that cover a mountain. It's 7,000 feet above sea level in the Andes Mountains. And it's also surrounded by beautiful, very steep mountains on all sides. And mist and cloud can get kind of caught in this mountain range system. And so it's a very secluded, atmospheric place. It definitely feels very kind of spiritual and apart. And I think that is one reason that it holds such appeal and why it was chosen as one of the new 7 wonders of the world.
Was it built intentionally to be hidden?
Was it built intentionally? No, it is a natural rock formation.
No, I mean that was part of the benefit. They were like, we're going to build this secret city in this like hidden valley.
Yeah. Well, it was. There's debate as to whether it was meant to be hidden.
Okay, but so I wasn't a dumb question if they're debating it.
You're right. It wasn't a dumb question because they do think that one of the reasons that it is in such great shape that these ruins have been preserved was because it was essentially hidden by virtue of being so high up a mountain. And so when the Spanish were coming in and destroying temples and Incan cities, they did not destroy Machu Picchu. And so it sort of, it fell into disrepair over time. But it was never intentionally destroyed. And, they didn't like plop Catholic churches on top of it.
No. Had they found it, they would have turned it into one massive Catholic church. So.
Yeah. And that's why it's super well preserved. And Machu Picchu in Quechua, the native Incan language, actually means old peak or old mountain. So that, of course, acknowledges the fact that it is this sort of mountain retreat. And indeed, it was built as a retreat for the great Inca. You remember Inca means the king.
The king, the ruler of the Incas is called the Inca. Yeah,
exactly
it's simple.
Right.
I like it. I like it.
You really are starting to listen more closely.
I listened to the pod,
It only took a year. But you're really starting to get there. And by the way,
typically I would re-listen to episodes that we were going to talk about, but as I didn't have
14
hours to go through the Peru catalog.
And you may remember from our previous episode that there was one Inca who's considered kind of the great builder of the empire, and his name is Pachacutec.
Right.
And Pachacutec...
that wasn't always his name. Like, it wasn't just one guy who was always good at building. They named him the Pachacutec. That was like a specific man's name.
Well, his name was Pachacutec.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like Inca, where it's like the Inca's always king, and then
Pachacutec was the Inca.
Oh.
He was the ruler. He's the Inca.
And the builder? He's like Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, no.
He's a ruler and a builder.
Sure. And Pachacutec also in Quechua translates to earth shaker. So you got the old peak built for the earth shaker. And there's been a lot of controversy as to what purpose this actually fulfilled. So what is there today is the ruins of about 150 buildings that have a huge, vast range of utility. You've got baths, you've got houses that were kind of like bunk houses for the servants and workers. You've got the more royal rooms where the Inca and the Inca court would stay. And, you can kind of tell this by some archaeological hints around. So, for example, they've located what they feel was the Inca's lavatory, because there's actually a drainage system in that room. And they think, well, if anybody got that, probably the Inca.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, very neat. Well, you got a lot of gravity when you're on top of when you're 7,000 feet above sea level.
Back then in Spain, they're just dumping their waste right in the middle of the street there, being like, not going to cause any problems.
Yeah, but they also had guns. So, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah, guns, germs, and steel.
And then you also have, of course, temples and sanctuaries. There's a pretty vast, what is generally considered a religious complex in Machu Picchu. And, Ryan, it will be no surprise for anyone that is familiar with anything in Inca architecture that the city is built out of these just massive stones that perfectly fit together. No nails, no screws. It uses a technique called ashlar, which is cutting the stones so perfectly that you don't need mortar for them to stay together. And some of them are so tight together you can't even fit a knife blade in between them. That's how well sculpted they are.
And they've held up over time.
They've held up over time. I mean, I remember in Cusco, you had colonial Spanish buildings that have crumbled from earthquakes. The Inca ruins still stand. So Machu Picchu still stands. And they get earthquakes up there, too.
They were amazing wall builders.
And there's, as with so much in ruins and famous places like this, archaeologists have a lot of disagreement around many different points. One of the points is how they got these enormous rocks up the mountain. And, they have never found, for as advanced of a civilization as they are, they have not found any indication that Incas used wheels for transportation. And so they think these rocks were dragged by workers up this mountain.
Don't you think that maybe one of the rocks might have been sort of a circle and then started to roll, and someone's like, hey, wait a minute.
I mean, do I think that? Yes, but I'm no archaeologist, so.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying. It seems like something like that they could have discovered while they were pulling up those rocks.
It actually reminds me, Ryan, of, they had their sort of neighbors to the north, the Aztecs, who also did not use wheels at any sort of scale, but yet had children's toys that had wheels on them, which tells you they knew the concept of the wheel.
They were like, if only the wheel could scale.
Yeah, if only with this toy could be enormous.
Well.
So you have to think about all that labor that went in when you're walking into the establishment, and just to give you a sense of the scale, 150 buildings, 100 different separate flights of stairs, many of which are staircases that are carved into a single slab of stone. So it's not like stones with earth below them. It's a single stone that was chipped away to make a staircase.
I mean, that seems like a lot of work.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is it was a lot of work. Exactly. And while it's generally agreed that this was Pachacutec's retreat where he would go during seasons where Cusco would get cold rains, he would retreat to Machu Picchu, hunt in the jungles, have religious ceremonies, enjoy himself on the top of this mountain. There are many different theories as to what Machu Picchu could have been. And these have taken hold at many different times. One is the person who rediscovered Machu Picchu. His name was Hiram Bingham. Have you ever heard of Hiram?
I feel like I have heard of him back when I was studying all the explorers, in middle school or something.
Yeah, Bingham's like a pretty big name among the explorers. He basically rediscovered the ruins of Machu Picchu in 1911. And you can read all about that journey in friend of the pod, Mark Adams' book, Turn Right at Machu Picchu. You remember Mark Adams?
Oh, I remember Mark Adams. Absolutely. We did a couple episodes with him last year.
Also, a multi-episode track back there, all about his journey through Alaska. One of the other journeys that he recreated was Hiram Bingham's hike through the Andes to rediscover Machu Picchu. And I'm saying rediscover very carefully because Peruvians really hate that Hiram Bingham gets credited as the discoverer of Machu Picchu, because even when he was led there by a Peruvian, there were locals who actually knew about the ruins. This was no secret, and they basically allowed him to excavate there, and he made several different trips over the years.
How long was it abandoned before he shows up, quote unquote, discovering it?
Well, that's exactly the point, is that it was never fully abandoned in truth. I mean, so Hiram Bingham, he actually thought that he had discovered kind of the last Inca city. He was a professor from Yale University. Some actually say that he was the inspiration for Indiana Jones, kind of the scholar adventurer. And local farmers were living there, but he had been on the search for this kind of legendary city called Vilcabamba La Vieja. And
I'm really tired of these folks getting credit for finding things by accident. Like if you're looking for one thing and then you bump into something else, you can't be like, oh, look what look what I found. It's not the Fountain of Youth, but it's Fort Lauderdale. I just feel like that's kind of bullshit.
Well, so you've just started to become upset about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, no, I've been upset about it for a while, but
I can hear in your voice a lot of pent up rage.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying, like when you say, someone is looking for XYZ and then they find something else,
Yeah.
it just seems to me they couldn't find what they were looking for.
Well, what's so ironic is he was looking for this lost city that was kind of the last holdout of the independent Inca rulers against the Spanish conquistadores in the 1500s. And he thought that he had found it in Machu Picchu, that this was the last kind of battle that they fought against the Spanish. But in fact, he had seen the city's ruins in the jungle, and so much of it had been overgrown that he didn't realize that he had seen it, this kind of last refuge. It's called Espiritu Pampa, and you can actually go visit that out in the Peruvian jungle, but it's quite far out there, very hard to get to. But anyway, that's something that's one explanation of what Machu Picchu was early on.
That's fascinating. So the thing he was looking for did exist. He just didn't notice that he found it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then because the Incas liked to build architecture that was very in harmony with the nature around it, there was a lot of speculation among archaeologists that it was built to kind of honor the landscape around, or even to be a physical manifestation of the Inca creation myth. And so there was this sense that as you walked through Machu Picchu, could you be trekking symbolically from Lake Titicaca and all the way to Cusco, which they considered the center of the empire itself. But a lot of these explanations were really pulling at pulling the strains of logic. But today, most agree this is a retreat that Pachacutec built for himself to relax.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem that far off from what leaders have done since the dawn of time, right? Like, you need your little summer palace, you need your winter palace.
Yeah,
that seems like a pretty likely example. Yeah,
this is Pachacutec's Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, can you imagine in the future when thousands of people go to see Mar-a-Lago every day, and it's like
it's a nightmare. This is not the first time you've brought that up, and it still makes me break out in a cold sweat. The idea that Mar-a-Lago is going to be a national park site.
It's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be the
National
best
Park
national park you've ever seen.
That Pachacutec was probably forcing the Air Force to refuel at Machu Picchu, stay overnight. And I also want to mention that when Bingham went on these several excavations to Machu Picchu, finding pottery and other artifacts, much of that was shipped back to Yale University, and there is still today a battle going on between Peru and Yale because Peruvians say that those items were being lent to Bingham to go back to Yale University for study, but were always intended to be returned. And Yale University insists, no, these are ours. And they still sit up in a Peabody Museum, which I grew up going to.
Right.
And they have much more in their archive that has not been returned to Peru.
It seems like if there's stuff that they're not displaying, it seems like it could be sent back to Peru.
Yeah, I totally agree. There should be actually. It's like the Elgin marbles at the British Museum,
right?
And in Athens, they have built a museum that it has space for them already. That like they could be shipped tomorrow, and they would have a secure museum space in Athens. And the British still haven't returned them. Yale still hasn't returned these.
One more strike against Yale.
So, Ryan, I want to talk a little bit about the logistics of what it takes to visit Machu Picchu today, because it's not a piece of cake. You do have to buy a ticket, and you cannot buy a ticket when you get there.
And Hiram found this out the hard way. He showed up without a ticket.
That's true, but he snuck his way in the back, and then he stole everything he got. And
him and Yale.
So make sure that you buy a ticket in Cusco or in Aguas Calientes, the town that sits below Machu Picchu. And
so you can't buy it online?
You can buy it online. You definitely should buy it online. And I especially recommend buying it through a touring company. I think it's worth investing in a tour guide to show you what you're seeing as you walk through. And that's because it is incredibly crowded. We talk about over-tourism a lot. It is depressingly over-touristed. So the site draws, on average, daily 5,600 visitors. And that is more than double what UNESCO recommends. And it is a UNESCO protected site. UNESCO wants them to limit it to 2,500 a day. So they're doing more than double that every day.
Be careful. UNESCO is going to put their foot down with their deep enforcement mechanisms.
Their long arm. Yeah, I mean, it's too bad. I mean, my experience was that you do certainly feel that there is a crush of people. However, if you make your way out to the less populated areas, which are still quite beautiful, which are still extraordinary, you can get moments of solitude among the ruins. But the most popular sites, some of which I'm going to talk about, you should check out, and they're popular for a reason. But you're not. It's going to be hard for you to shoot any photos without somebody else standing there, and you're probably only going to get a minute at most to admire it.
Is there a time of year that is like inhospitable enough that most people don't want to go, but you can risk it? Because that to me is a real question.
All right, so if you're trying to avoid it at kind of the busiest times, June to September, typical vacation time, those are the hardest times to get there. But there are the months on either side, April, May, September, October, where it's still usually pretty good weather and the crowds are slightly reduced. I would say, though, particularly the end of July into August, these are actually holidays in Peru, and so then they are particularly popular, especially because Peruvians get a discounted price to go in, so it's a little more attractive. For foreigners, you have to pay a higher price. It's about $80 a day to go in. And then if you're paying for a tour guide on top of that, it's not an inexpensive endeavor.
And it looks like from November to March, it rains. 80% of the rain that falls in Peru falls in those months. So if you're going to try to go November to March, you're gonna probably hit some serious rainstorms.
Yep, and I can actually talk about that from personal experience. Catherine and I stayed in this pretty rough hotel the night before we were going.
Really?
And it was very loud, thin walls. And so as we were going to bed, I brought up on my phone rain as a white noise to fall asleep to try to drown out the other denizens of this place.
Okay.
And when we woke up, my phone had timed out that white noise, but we could still hear really pouring rain. And I said to Catherine, I got some bad news for you. And it was torrentially pouring outside. So you definitely want to bring, even during the good season, this was in June, you definitely want to pack rain gear. And I'm not talking just a poncho. You really want rain pants and a rain jacket. Because you've come all this way. You've put up a lot of money. It's hard to get to. And you are going to see Machu Picchu if you paid for it. So you better darn be prepared.
So one of those $2 umbrellas you buy on the street in New York, that's not the kind of umbrella
it's not going
we're
to fly,
talking-
especially not because of the crowds there, right? So bring your rain gear, have it ready. Don't let the rain ruin your good time. And also, when you buy a ticket to Machu Picchu, do not forget to bring your passport. So if you're making a trip from Cusco and you're not staying over and you left your passport back in Cusco, not good. They will check your passport to be sure that you are the rightful ticket holder. So do not forget that. That's incredibly important.
That is really good to know. So you actually have to bring your passport to match the tickets because you can't scalp it. It's not Hamilton. Okay, there's no ticket scalping happening here. Yeah.
And I've already given my recommendation previously, but it's important to say here, they have Inca steps that you climb up to get to Machu Picchu. I would highly recommend not doing those. They are incredibly steep. They are not historically accurate. They're not actually Inca steps. Just get the bus and go on up.
If I recall correctly, you did the steps.
We did do the steps,
Correct?
yes. And I very, very sweaty. And I was disgusting and soaked on the inside and the outside by the time I got up there. And,
the whole time you're watching these buses of just nice, dry people going up. Just, and,
people
drinking their coffee, enjoying themselves.
Because the Inca steps go straight up, but the buses go up a switchback. So you get to see the buses pass you like every, 800 steps. And it's a real nightmare. And many of them beat us to the front of the line. So you're not gaining any time. Also, Ryan, I should mention the easiest way to get to Aguas Calientes in order to see Machu Picchu, to get to Machu Picchu, is to take a train from Cusco. Also, by spending time in Cusco, you'll have gotten yourself a little acclimated to the elevation, so you'll be able to enjoy it, not be tired or distracted by a headache. And if you're somebody who likes to spend a little grain, you can actually take a luxury train.
I mean, these trains are out of control.
Yeah, there's a luxury train named after Hiram Bingham.
Right.
And
that's how he got there, actually. He took a luxury train.
I mean,
he built it and then went, you know.
Yeah. Why don't you describe it?
Oh, I mean, I'm doing this from memory, but if I recall correctly, it's like glass everywhere, and you can see like up and down and around. It's like a 360 glass. It's incredibly luxurious. I mean, it looks incredible. I mean, I wouldn't want to leave. Once we got there on the train, I'd be like, I'll just stay. You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Mountain doesn't look good to me.
And it's like beautiful dark wood and rich upholstery and kind of plush seats. I mean, it's a real colonial experience, I would say. It is not as
a real colonial experience. Yeah.
And, you know, many people will choose to do the Inca Trail, which is a multi-day hiking trip, or you could do the Salcantay Trail, which is what we did. So lots of different ways to get there, and that's a part of the fun. But I want to close out the description as sort of the meatiest part, which is I'm going to tell you 6 prime spots that you got to see when you get to Machu Picchu. So the inside, you know, it's huge. As I said, 150 buildings. Like, it's going to be hard to see everything. And it's kind of broken out into 3 kind of basic areas. One is the religious area. That's also where the royal bedroom and court is. Then you've got the secular area, which is where kind of the workers and servants were. And then you had the agricultural area because they did a lot of farming on site, so that the Inca and everyone there would always have easy access to agricultural goods. But really, most of the most noteworthy and most interesting ruins that are there are in that sacred area, because they are temples that still have sculptures and rock formations that still today we're trying to figure out what they were for. And many show the Incas, and many demonstrate the Incas' sophisticated knowledge of science. All right, so the first one is the Temple of the Sun. And this was one of the primary temples there. There are many temples there, but this is one of the big ones. And it might also be the royal tomb. They're not totally sure. There were not remains of Pachacutec there once it was excavated, but there's strong suggestions that it could have been, because there is a temple, this sort of circular-shaped temple that's quite high up, and below it is a natural cave with a carved staircase leading it down. The carved staircase I will absolutely put on the Instagram, because it's one of the iconic photos that you take at Machu Picchu. You know, sort of irregular steps. You could see yourself tripping down them. You're not allowed to walk down them nowadays. And they think that this may have led to where the body was interred. And the temple itself has 2 windows, and they sort of face each other. They are positioned so that the sun shines through them exactly on the 2 solstices. You've got the December solstice, the June solstice, and the rays of light. You remember that Indiana Jones where, you know, he holds up the staff and the light comes in?
Yeah.
It's like that. And so
minus the all that magic that happens.
Yeah, well, it's still, you know, it's a certain type of magic. It's a travel magic.
Have you watched any Indiana Jones?
Of course.
Lately?
Of course. Lately, yes, it does not age well.
I mean, there's a couple things in there.
But he kills a lot of the Nazis, and so that's a good thing.
No, he's killing Nazis, but at the same time, he's problematic, I think.
Yeah, the most recent one was absolutely horrible. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't. We just rewatched.
Do you know what the big takeaway is?
No, what is it?
Can I ruin it for you?
Yeah, it's most definitely.
He's trying to figure out where this like ruin came from, and it turns out aliens came from the space and created this architecture on Earth.
That's a real possibility.
Well, I am 100% sure there's a conspiracy theory about Machu Picchu being created by aliens. And if they were well acquainted with our human sun, because this essentially acts as a solar observatory, but also people come from all over the world to observe the light coming through these windows. And so I would recommend to you, do not visit on one of these solstice days, because they get even more visitors on those days.
I bet, because it's like, you know, everyone's waiting for the magical thing to happen, that Stargate to open or whatever.
But I always wonder, like, if you did that, can you imagine, like, if it's cloudy that day, you're not
Yeah.
going to get any of it.
No, but it's a reason to come back.
Reason to come back. That's exactly right. We should get T-shirts that say that. All right. So the first is that Temple of the Sun, and if you're not there on one of the solstice days, you can imagine the sun piercing through one of those two windows facing December and June solstices. The second is actually I can only really describe it as a sculpture, and it's got a name, and the name is Intihuatana, and that's Intihuatana, and it is this.
Folks are not going to know this, but I helped you pronounce that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're gonna cut it, but that was me.
Yeah. That's you called it Intihuatana. You called it Tuana Hina Hadi. You called it Cerveza and El Pastor. No, it's Intihuatana. And Intihuatana is a sculpture. It's a very large rock, like a rock so big that you couldn't move it. And it's a four-sided sculpture, and it was actually given that name by Hiram Bingham, the man who discovered it, the Yaley who discovered it. And it means the place to which the sun was tied. But there is no consensus on what this rock was formed of what purpose this rock had. If you look at it, it has a piece that sort of juts up towards the sky like a little tower on it. It's got steps that seem to lead up to it, and kind of odd trapezoidal shapes. I mean, if nothing else, it really looks like a piece of modern art, quite a beautiful piece of modern art. But there's debate. Is this some sort of solar observatory? Is there relationship to constellations that we haven't deciphered yet? Is this an altar? Could this have been a place where they made sacrifices? Or is it trying to emulate the sort of piercing nature of these very steep mountains that surround it? And, the point is we don't know, but it is absolutely gorgeous to look at. You can feel that there was a lot of thought and planning that went into shaping this rock.
And one of the strange things that's happened here is actually a corner of this rock was broken by an ad agency when they were filming a beer commercial.
Good Lord.
I know.
Does UNESCO protection mean nothing?
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah, a camera crane actually damaged a piece of that pillar, the tower that kind of stands up in it. And
you'd think that they'd be like, hey, keep the camera crane away from all the, priceless antiquities surrounding us.
Yeah, and instead they just chipped it. It's a real nightmare. It just goes back to what
the shot looked great, by the way, though.
Absolutely. I'm drinking the beer right now.
I think they won an award for that one,
Oh, you think they won at the Cannes Ad Festival?
Hey, that's a real thing.
I know. All right. So, moving on, the third place that you got to check out. Now, this one is also a rock. Just to let you know.
God, there's a lot of rocks.
There are a lot of rocks, but this one is pretty fascinating. Where just as I was saying that there's some discussion whether Intihuatana is meant to mimic the mountains that surround Machu Picchu. This sacred rock. There's no question that it is exactly cut at every angle to mimic the mountain that sits directly behind it. That mountain is called Yanantin, Yanantin mountain, and it has a very distinctive shape. It's like a longer kind of drawn out arrowhead, and it has several very distinct angles. And this rock exactly mimics it, and it makes for an absolutely lovely photo. Again, check out at OOO Podcast, like at OOO Podcast on Instagram this week, and I'll be posting this. This sacred rock, it's so cool to see how exactly artistically it mimics the mountain behind it. And it just goes to show you that every chip of the stone was very thoughtfully made.
And every chip of the stone will be chipped off very thoughtfully by a marketing agency looking for the perfect shot.
Trying to sell beer. And also this one apparently has quite a following among the hippie set who feel that this sacred stone lets out a sort of special spiritual energy. So now you can't drape your arms around it, but up until just a few years ago, that's what visitors often did to try to absorb the energy coming out of it.
We've come a long way since we were letting people, bang these things with cameras and just hug them. And, I'm glad somebody finally was like, hey, we should protect this for future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fourth is called the Temple of the Three Windows.
Is this a rock?
Well, there are rocks involved. Yes, what do you expect? They're not working with particle board here. Yeah, it's rock. Okay, it's rock. And this is at an area called the Sacred Plaza, which has temples on three sides. And the Temple of the Three Windows. You might be able to guess what the major architectural feature you want to see here is.
The windows.
Yeah, you are a clever, clever boy. Yeah, there are three trapezoidal windows that
Are they Tiffany?
They are, but
I
Hiram
mean,
Bingham
yeah.
took the Tiffany glass and shipped it back to Yale.
Yale's got
and
'em.
Yale is not displaying them. And these windows overlook the main square, so you get quite a lovely view outside of them. And they are so perfectly shaped next to each other, they almost look modern in how perfectly carved they are. And you can see that there used to be 5 windows. But it is called Temple of the Three Windows because those other 2, one on each side, were filled in, and there's a suggestion that maybe they put religious objects in those, like sort of niches in the wall.
But we haven't gone in there to look.
Oh no, you did. They're not still there. There's nothing currently sitting in those shelves.
Right. Okay. No, that's what So I'm looking at the picture right now, and I see the 3 windows, and I see where the 2 on each side have been filled in.
I mean, I would imagine that basically nobody noticed, and they had already been calling it the Temple of the Three Windows for so many years. They were like, just fill them in. just fill them in.
Yeah, they are. They do look like it does look like a nice plaster job. So
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're coming down to my final 2 choice of places you can't miss when you visit
What?
Machu Picchu, and these are 2 of the most interesting places that you can see.
wait, can you just give me some idea of scale? Like, how long does it take you to get from the different places we're talking about? Is it like a 5-minute walk? Is it like you're spending the day there?
So you can reasonably walk across the major ruins in an hour to an hour and a half. I mean, depending on
Depending on the line.
well, it's not exactly a line.
I'm just imagining like Mount Everest, where to see everything, you wait in like a line to a line to a line.
I mean, there certainly are areas and times when it is like that, but
Can you buy a fast pass?
no, they don't have that technology.
Skip
yet.
the line? No.
So you can walk among many of these major places within half an hour. But to get to the further outpost, that sort of more residential area, the farming area, you definitely want to set aside half a day. I mean, you've paid a lot to get there. You should spend time just kind of roaming and not checking you should check all of these off your list. I did. But you also want to make some time just to wander and take in the ambiance of the place. It's one of those places. So the 5th recommendation, and this has such a fascinating carving in it, it's called the Temple of the Condor. The condor is a bird with a vast wingspan up to 8 feet wide, and it is revered by the Andean people. And it was then, and it still is now. And indeed, on the floor of this temple is a perfectly carved head of a condor, and just behind it are its spread wings. That's where it got its name, the Temple of the Condor. And 2 interesting bits here. The first is that there is like a cave. There's an area where you can go down behind the Temple of the Condor. Actually, you can't go down, but one used to be able to go down, in the time of the Inca. And there was some belief that this might have been like the dungeons for prisoners, but now that's not generally believed. It's been excavated. There were a bunch of llama and guinea pig remains down there. So maybe it was just the dumping ground for, sacrificed animals.
Or maybe those were some really bad llamas. Right? I mean, guinea pigs. Devilish guinea pigs.
You know what? I have not read that it was a llama prison, but I think there's a fair chance that you've just cracked the code.
No problem.
You really are the Indiana Jones of this podcast.
Don't forget about the devilish guinea pigs.
There's also up above, recessed into the wall above the condor carving, there are these curious little niches in the wall. And folks thought, well, maybe that's where they chained prisoners up. But now it's believed that this might have been for mummy worship. They know that Incas that died were preserved, and they were taken out into public. They were dressed There were priests who were they had to like communicate with the dead Inca who was still there in their bodily form. And so there's some suggestion that maybe mummies could have been hung above this condor sculpture and worshipped. But all of this is conjecture, very hard to know. And I feel like it's one of those things where like when archaeologists can't figure out a use for something, they're like, it was religious. They worshipped that, and then they made sacrifices over there, and it's religious.
Yeah. Well,
The other thing is it's either religious or it's decorative, right? So
Right.
either way, I think the condor
war.
works. Yeah, right. And the last place you got to see, and it's two things that I want to describe. It's basically as you're walking through this room that's very close to the Temple of the Condor, you come across what look like stone basins set into the ground. So picture close to the ground, large, wide, concave indentations, almost like if a hubcap were turned upside down, made of really heavy, thick stone and inset into the ground. And often these collect water because a lot of moisture up there. As you say, they get a lot of rain. And Hiram Bingham, when he came upon these, thought he was sure that he had come upon the kitchen preparation area. These look like areas where you could grind grain, creating flour. You could see them being, used as giant bowls. But really, but there are two fascinating theories about what these might actually have been used for. Ryan, I wonder if you have any ideas.
Like water basins?
Water basins. So one of them is actually both of these theories do rely on the fact that water collects in them. The first is that Peru is a country that is prone to earthquakes,
Right.
and maybe these were earthquake detectors.
So they were looking for the water to be like moving a little bit.
Exactly, because they would see the ripples and the sort of sloshing side to side before the real earthquake hit.
That's about where we are right now with earthquake detection.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the big one that's coming for the Pacific Northwest. We should send some of these earthquake detectors over them.
Yeah.
The latest Inca technology. But the final one that I think is so interesting is we know that we know that the Inca were so often building to reflect upon what they saw in the sky that maybe these were meant as mirrors so that you could look down to look up, that at night you could study the constellations in the reflection in these basins.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, very cool. And, so you wouldn't strain your neck. You wouldn't have to get dirty laying on the ground. And
couldn't it be both an earthquake detector and, a way to look at the constellations?
Yeah, I mean, I like that. And maybe they cooked in it. Maybe they drank out of it occasionally.
Yeah, they were smart folks. They they believed in what do you call that when something has a lot of uses?
Multi-purpose.
I guess, yeah. They believed in multi-purpose.
Yeah. They believed in multi-purpose furniture. If I had to guess, it was probably also a little decorative and maybe a little religious.
Yeah, and you could put wine in it if you was there for a festival or something.
Sure. I don't think they had wine, but sure. They had like a fermented corn beer.
They had something. Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, if you're spending that much time on top of the mountain, like waiting for earthquakes, you got to pass the day.
You got to have a little drink. Yeah. I hear you.
All right, I have one final recommendation. This actually goes back to the ticket that you're going to buy. And that is there's a mountain that is adjacent to Machu Picchu, and it's called Huayna Picchu. Huayna Picchu. Picchu just like Machu Picchu. And it is when you buy your ticket, you can buy entrance to the hike up Huayna Picchu. And what this does is it's about an hour hike up, an hour down. It has some ruins of its own that are quite great in their own right, but you can look back on Machu Picchu and get the absolute perfect panorama of the ruins you've just visited. So it's a little extra money, it's a little extra time, but I promise you, it is worth the climb. It's not too strenuous, though. It's not for the weak need. But you get just a beautiful overlook back over all of the areas we've just discussed. And I know on the day that I was there, mists were sort of moving very quickly over the ruins. And it is one of the more memorable experiences I've had. I waited for nearly an hour to be able to get a clear shot of a lot of the ruins, and I'll post that photo as well. But while you're there, please do it. Huayna Picchu, Huyna Picchu. Definitely worth it.
Well, I feel like I am prepped now to really enjoy my trip to Machu Picchu.
Absolutely. And in preparation, go pick up Take a Ride at Machu Picchu by Mark Adams. You will be it's funny because when you go on the plane to Peru from the US, like every other person is reading that book on the plane.
Really?
Yeah. It's extremely popular.
Well, we will definitely link to that episode in the show notes.
For sure.
So, Kiernan, Machu Picchu was named one of the new 7 wonders of the world in 2007. I mean, those were simpler times in 2007. Does it really hold up?
Yeah, it holds up. I mean, it physically holds up, obviously. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And this really is one of the most special places I've ever had the privilege to visit. I believe it does belong on bucket lists. It would certainly be on my personal list of 7 wonders of the world. You will not be disappointed, even despite the crowds, even if you get a rainy day. It is a place like no other. And Ryan, I thought, just to really pinpoint exactly the sort of experience you could have. A couple weeks ago, we talked about when you have amazing sites, how you can go to TripAdvisor and look at people who wrote 1-star reviews of it. And The Guardian pulled just a classic one for Machu Picchu. So just close your eyes and imagine. Quote, "The people who lived in the lost city of Machu Picchu would turn in their grave at the people who run this attraction. The food here absolutely sucks. The so-called Italian pizza has a horrible tasting llama cheese on it. No matter what they tell you, that's what it is. 1 star."
I didn't think that it was known for its pizza.
No. You noticed that stopping by the Inca pizzeria didn't make it on my six places to stop.
So you're saying pack a lunch is really what you're saying.
You absolutely want to pack a lunch.
Yeah, get yourself a nice guinea pig sandwich and just take that up with you.
Exactly. And so thank you very much. You can see further reviews of that as well. Also at the link I'll put in the Telegraph, pulling 1-star reviews for Machu Picchu. Ryan, I think it's time. God, I'm just so even just describing it, I feel chilled out, kind of a spiritual high. Let's head in to the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan, we are here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show. It's your favorite segment, my favorite segment, popularly known as the People segment. It's a moment where we each pause, we reflect, we share one thing. We don't go into 2, we don't go into 3. I mean, this is the end of the show. We got places to be. There's only so many episodes on Peru people can sit through. We're gonna share one thing that we did. We ate, we bought, we read, something that fed the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week, because you can't always be traveling. So, Ryan, I need to know, did you bring a last stop this week?
I did bring a last stop this week, Kiernan. I watched a documentary called Into Eternity last week, which is about the construction of a nuclear waste repository in Finland. Did you know that every day, all over the world, an extraordinary amount of radioactive waste is produced by nuclear power plants and is just put in these storage units that are vulnerable to all sorts of disasters?
No, I didn't know that.
Well, it is true. And Finland, being, a country that's a little forward-looking, was like, wait a minute, we need to solve this problem for an eternity. And in this case, an eternity is 100,000 years, because that's how long it takes the nuclear waste to be not harmful any longer. So they have built the first permanent nuclear waste facility in Finland, and it will be, if it survives, the only human-built structure ever to last 100,000 years. I mean, we're talking about 1450 with Machu Picchu here, right? So this is a hell of a dice roll. And what's really fun / horrifying about the film is all these nuclear experts admit that they don't know how to tell people not to dig it up. Because anything they do, if they put a sign there that says "Do not dig,"
Of course, people are gonna dig.
Yeah, maybe they don't speak Finnish anymore, right?
Yeah, right.
Maybe what kind of sign says not to dig, or because people are going to look at it and they're going to go, this looks guarded
This
and
looks
important.
diggable.
There's probably something really valuable down there.
Yeah.
And then they're going to dig, and then and they have to go really far. I mean, it's extraordinarily far, but they'll go. People will go because
Maybe they
valuable.
should put a giant X on it.
They've said, like, if they put an X, what they hope will happen is that history will forget that it exists.
So they made a film to be sure that history forgets.
They made a documentary, which I think is one of the better ways to hide something.
Fair point. Yeah.
No, but so the idea is that this will be forgotten, or at least future civilizations will not dig down in there when they come across this sort of like underground rock structure. But it's a fascinating proposition, isn't it? Because you think so much about you really have to really play the long game here and think, how are you going to keep future civilizations from just destroying themselves with their nuclear waste? Now, here in the United States, we just all put it in Yucca Mountain or something, right? We don't really worry about it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just about to say. I mean, they're doing this, but does it really matter? Because nobody else is.
Right. No, I think it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, everybody else is just going to like throw it in the ocean or whatever. So the fact that they're going out of their way to really protect this nuclear waste, I think it's adorable. And the fact that they imagine there will be human civilizations or some kind of civilization in 100,000 years to even find this nuclear fueled repository.
I mean, why not just put it out, far from, just put it out in like the Galapagos Islands. It's far.
I say space.
Oh, space. Yeah, space. Forgot about space.
We don't care about space, right?
And there's so much space up there. That's why it's called that.
Yeah, it's infinite space. And look, we're not up there, so it's not our problem if we shoot some stuff in there. So
what I like about the idea of putting it on the Galapagos is that you'll start getting a lot of weird evolution happening faster. Because, that's what it was always known for. Let's get some like three-eyed tortoises.
Yeah, it would most definitely bring out the some of those exciting animals that sort of hang out in Chernobyl, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Exactly. All right, Ryan, and just one last time for all of us who are not meant to visit it and all of us who are meant to forget where it is. Where is that again?
It's the Onkelos Spent Nuclear Fuel Repository. And really exciting. It's going to begin operations in 2023, so I look forward to not going there.
You should stop there on your way back from Chernobyl.
Yeah, I could make a whole day of it.
Make a whole day of it.
What have you been thinking about this week, Kiernan?
All right. Well, Ryan, you know that soon to be a father, proud papa.
Whoa.
And my last stop is tied to that, which is Catherine discovered a really interesting fact about Israel. And that is that very few Israeli children have peanut allergies. Peanut allergies, major growing concern in the U.S. And as it turns out, in Israel, they feed children peanuts a lot earlier. They feed them this snack. It's called Bamba, Bamba. And it's a peanut butter and corn snack that, it's like easy to chew. So you can give it a kid like right when they can have food. It could be like one of their first real foods.
Right.
And scientists believe that by introducing them to peanuts this early, they are much less likely to have peanut food allergies. So we have just put in an order for a big bag of Bamba. And we are planning on shoving this into the face of the kid as soon as it's around, as soon as it can deal with it. Because, I got to be able to have peanut butter in the house.
What about beans?
Oh, I mean, you can imagine. I mean, maybe I should just slather some beans and peanut butter, just start spooning that in. I mean,
more people are allergic to peanuts now than they used to be?
Oh, yeah. It's a huge. Oh, it's a giant problem now. Scientists are not sure why, but they think it may be a self-perpetuating problem where parents are more nervous that their children have peanut allergies, and therefore they delay introducing them to peanuts out of fear that they have the allergy, but not introducing them may be causing the allergy.
So the first time you introduce them, should you surround them with EpiPens and just be ready to go in case something goes wrong?
I mean, my kid is going to be surrounded by EpiPens at all times.
I mean, your kid's going to have some allergies. I can't imagine, this kid getting out of there without a handful of allergies.
Sure.
They're related to you.
Yeah, no, fair point. I've got some medical allergies, but growing up, man, I used to get hives out of like everything. You looked at me wrong and I got a hive. And I'll just tell you this as one thing. This has become so prevalent that the U.S. National Institutes of Health actually did a study on 640 babies who they identified as at risk for peanut allergies because they had eczema or they had egg allergies already, which apparently can be predictors.
Gosh, you can be allergic to eggs. I mean, like, then you eat nothing if you can't have eggs and peanuts.
No,
That's like
you
half
can't-
my childhood.
Can't have a classic peanut omelet. And so they asked half of the infants' parents to give Bamba or peanut butter soup or any sort of peanut butter product. And then half that did not serve peanuts to the children at all. And of those who did not get peanuts, 17% developed peanut allergies. Of those who did get peanuts, 3.2% had allergies.
So this is old-fashioned exposure therapy.
Old-fashioned
essentially.
exposure, right? So that's why
You give them, you're going to give your kid a little bit of the smallpox. Just give them like, just a little bit of it.
Oh, I'm hoping that Bombas comes with a little small pack, a little smallpox container that you can just open it up and breathe it in.
Yeah. Every kid should, when they're born, should just be shot with part of the MMR vaccine should just be a peanut vaccine.
I promise not to cut that so that it just says every new kid gets born should just be shot.
Why? I may or may not believe that. So.
So we got some good Israeli snacks coming. I've never been to Israel, but I'm going to have just a little taste of it in the house. And I did say to Catherine, what if the kid can't eat it by the time it expires? And we both agreed we'll just snack on it ourselves because peanut and corn, what's not to like?
Yeah, as long as you're not allergic.
Exactly. So Ryan, what are we talking about next week?
We're going to talk about how important it is to always know about your visa situation when you're traveling.
It's so important.
It can really, let me tell you, make or break a vacation.
It can break a vacation. It can break a man.
Yeah, well, the man can still stand, but
I think you're still recovering. But we are going to share, how you find out what travel visas you need, the different ways that you can get it. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. Usually, there are often there are complicated rules around it. Sometimes you got to deal with embassies, you got to deal with consulates. Sometimes you can get it at the airport, sometimes you can't. How to apply for a travel visa and be sure that you can get into the country you want to.
Do you need a visa to go to Peru?
You do not require a tourist visa for Peru at this time. And I should say that's 2019. Trump may have ruined that relationship by this point. You may need a visa by the time you're listening to this.
So yes, always Google. Well, we'll get there. Well, look, until then,
don't tip the hand to all the hot takes.
Until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, your Peruvian podcast.
This seat taken.
3 windows just isn't as symmetric as.
You don't find them to be symmetric?
Well, I mean, they are symmetric, but on the other side, then you've got the other 2 windows that would have made it like really giving you a better view. I think.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. More.
If I was
windows,
renovating,
more
I
view.
would knock out those walls there and just really, open that space up.
Level. It's time to take off.
Folks?
What's folks?
I don't know.
Tell the cabin crew.
Cabin crew?